I have 8 o'clock, so good morning. Thank you very much for getting up on the last day. I'll try to make it worth your while. This talk is Amazon Web Services for the SQL Server Professional, and I'm LynnLangit. And some of you might have heard my spiel yesterday if you came to my other talk, but very, very interesting that I'm here at SQL Pass presenting on this because a year ago I was a Microsoft employee. So how this talk came to be is I've gone back out to be a private consultant about a year ago now, which is what I used to do before I worked at Microsoft. And I had very deep knowledge of the Microsoft Cloud as a Microsoft evangelist. I was doing a lot of work around SQL Azure. And the last year that I worked at Microsoft, I started going to competitive conferences and getting a sense of what the landscape was. And I actually presented to Microsoft internally on Amazon. So it's very, very ironic. And what I found is when I went out into consulting practice, I wanted to use Amazon's cloud. So in this year that I've been out getting customers started on the cloud, I've done deployments to the cloud. And it's been Amazon or Google. I've done nothing on Azure. So I would go to various SQL events and talk about SQL Server 2012, and I would, as an aside, mention Amazon. And my community down in Los Angeles said, well, we'd like to know about it. And so that's where this talk came from. Because it's a little unusual. I was actually surprised when it was accepted at SQL Pass. So when I've given this talk in Southern California, my SQL community has told me that they found it to be valuable because I've spent a lot of time working on Amazon's cloud in production, and I've gone through the process of learning what the various services are, which takes some time. So the goals of my talk today are twofold. The first goal is to there's a lot of demos, basically. Demonstrate the services that I think are of interest to people that work with data. So to focus on those services and to actually show you how they work so that you can understand from a service offering standpoint what you might want to look at. And then as we're talking about things, I know one person already asked me about best practices. I'll try to add some best practices, some use cases, things like that. My primary goal, though, is just to get you started because what I find, at least in my Southern California community, is people are curious about AWS, but they haven't had time to look at it. So I'm trying to condense my hours and hours of looking at it into a short period so you can take this away and have a basis for starting. So that's kind of what I'm here to do. So hopefully that makes sense. It's very ironic. Here I am presenting on AWS. Really, I didn't think it would get accepted, and I was surprised. So hopefully you'll like it. What and why is Amazon Web Services? Amazon's Web Services is Amazon's cloud service offering. So if you are familiar with the Azure offering, they have offerings across all those service levels, whether it's infrastructure or platform, not so much software as a service, but all those service levels. In particular, of interest to us, they have quite a few offerings around data in the cloud. And that, of course, is going to be my big focus. They do have offerings around compute, so like Windows, Azure Compute, and I will actually show you that, but that'll be a small part of the talk. Why you might want to look at this is because Amazon has been at this game since the beginning. They are not the only market leader, but they are clearly a market leader. Some people would say the market leader. So they have an extensive service offering. They have very competitive pricing. Now that doesn't mean that they are not without issues. All the cloud providers, but most notoriously Amazon, have suffered outages. So again, I don't work for Amazon, so I'll tell you kind of the reality of Amazon, which is also kind of refreshing to hear, isn't it? It's fun not working for a company. It's been, as an aside, I've had every big company try to hire me, and it's been really fun saying, no, 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 no. So why Amazon? Broad set of services, in-market longest, usually the cheapest, and what I find is most often used in production, highest level of confidence. It's interesting in different sectors, most notably if you're dealing with startups. The venture capitalists really have decided that Amazon's cloud is what startups should be on. And literally in Los Angeles, if you try to use somebody else's cloud, you have to justify to the VC why you'd want to do that. Now, I'm not saying that that's good or bad. I'm just reporting the news. So if you work in a contract basis with startups, at least in the West Coast, because it's the same in Silicon Valley, the expectation is that you as a database professional will understand Amazon's cloud. That's another reason I'm sharing this, because I've actually gotten work out of it. So, okay, so from a very high level, you can think of the things that are offered in Amazon's cloud as 3 different sets of services. One is hosted compute. And like I said, that's going to be the smallest part of the talk. That would be platform as a service, where you create your application and deploy it, and you can scale it, so like a website. And that's analogous to Windows, Azure, Web, and Worker roles. They have an offering there. It's called Elastic Beanstalk. And I'm actually going to show it probably at the end. There's a misconception that it requires non-Microsoft languages. That's incorrect. They actually came out with support for .NET languages and pretty good integration with Visual Studio. So it's just not as well known. I think just generally platform as a service isn't as mature. I've worked with some startups, and there's been a lot of frustration around platform as a service APIs because they have limitations. You get the sort of managed environment, but what you don't get is the ability to use the APIs that you've used to develop applications in a sort of complete form. So I think it's an interesting space to look at, but it's going to be a small part of this talk. Bigger part of this talk is going to be hosted data. Some of you might have come to my talk yesterday, No SQL for the SQL Server Professional. If you didn't, I have lots of resources around that. One of the other big, shifts, if you will, that has occurred since I've come back out of Microsoft is I'm doing about 25% of my consulting work now on not relational data stores. So MongoDB, consulting on Hadoop, stuff like that. And they have offerings around all those NoSQL storage types in their cloud. So they also have SQL Server. That's why we're here. And then they have other services. So they have other types of services which have to do with routing and monitoring and things like that. I'm not covering that much here. I'm covering mostly data because it's SQL Pass. Make sense? Okay. They add more services every day. How many of you currently use Amazon for anything? Raise your hand. What do you use? S3? Most of you? S3? Okay. Yeah, that's the big. It's the file server in the sky, basically. That's the most common thing people get started with. If you see here from the screenshot, you can see that the services are grouped in a couple different categories, and I'm actually going to go out to the actual thing here. So they're grouped by compute and networking, storage and content delivery, which is raw storage rather than some kind of relational or some sort of structure to it. Then databases, then deployment and management, and then app services. So we're going to focus on compute, storage, and databases, other than Elastic Beanstalk. There's a whole bunch of things that I'm not even going to talk about in here because, again, focusing on data. One of the really interesting challenges of keeping up with cloud in general, but Amazon in particular, is how quickly they release. They release incredibly, incredibly fast. What I would recommend is that you RSS Jeff Barr, he's the lead evangelist, his blog, to stay on top of releases. Because some of these releases you really care about. For example, they just announced a price drop in RDS, the relational database service, which is something that you might be really interested in. So really important to stay on top of all the releases. So the thing that I got started with Amazon was virtual machines, EC2. How many of you used EC2? Raise your hand. Okay. To me, it's a fantastic experience for one of the services that I provide as a consultant for training. One of the challenges I have as a contract trainer is the training environment is never set up correctly. If any of you do contract training, you know what I'm talking about. It's the biggest freaking pain. No matter how much you write the instructions out, because especially if you do a dedicated onsite, the client, that's not the full-time IT job, and they just do the best they can, but it is invariably incredibly badly screwed up, which is a big problem as a trainer. So one real-world problem. What I started doing is I started using EC2 instances or virtual machines that I configure. And that way, I can just turn them on and then charge the client for the compute hours And it's great for the client because there's no setup, and it's great for me because it's set up correctly. So this is a use case that I think it has very broad applicability. I mean, there's lots of other reasons to use VMs in the sky. Lots of other reasons. Another reason that I've used VMs in the sky is for testing. Testing new versions of SQL Server. You may or may not know, but SQL Server 2012 CTPs, they had pre-built images on Amazon EC2 that you could just turn on. Much faster than installing all that beta stuff. I use that during my training cycle. Also, I have shops now where they're starting to put the development environments on EC2. So training and dev has been my use case. There is, it's a virtual machine in the sky, so you can virtualize whatever, but I'm just sharing what I've done with this. So how EC2 works, I'll go out and I'll start demoing this, is you basically can create your virtual machine, or you can use what's called an AMI, an Amazon Machine Image. And if you use an Amazon Machine Image, and I'll just say Amazon images that are owned here, it then has, the OS installed or different things installed. Now, I'll tell you a couple things about AMIs. You can save your AMIs, you can share your AMIs, you can make your private, so on and so forth. They have a marketplace of them, but there's also some things to watch out for. There have been people that have put AMIs with malicious stuff on it in the public AMIs. I would not use public AMIs at all. I really just wouldn't use them. Now, I haven't personally had any problems, but I've heard about problems. If you want to find out information about an AMI, so if I say Amazon images and I want Windows, then I can see I've got like this one right here, and then I can see the information about it. And then if I want to create an instance of it, let me just make it so I can get there. I go down, and then I can right-click it, and I can say Launch Instance. So now I have a VM in the sky. Now, again, as a point of comparison, because we're at a Microsoft basically show, Microsoft's launched their VMs, their infrastructure as a service, recently as beta. As far as I understand, it's still a beta service. Just for point of comparison, this has been around for years, EC2. So what does this look like if you have an instance? Let me just go up here, go up here, go up here, go up here. You can tell it's 8 o'clock in the morning. Go up here. Let me refresh. And then you just connect to it with RDP. Why is this doing this? Let me go back and go to my instance. Now, instances, you're charged by compute hours. So the big tip I have on instances, if you're using them for training, for example, is you can pause them. You can basically shut them off. So a good money-saving tip is you spin up these instances and you turn them on when you want to use them. Another thing I've used them for is load testing. Because you can spin up really powerful instances and you can run some load against it just to get some idea of what it might look like. So this guy I have paused. This is my EC2 instance. And if I right-click on it, then I can go ahead. The resolution is going to be hard here. I can go ahead and I can turn it on. Let me see. Instance action. Start. See? So you have terminate, reboot, start, stop. So I'm going to start this instance, which then will cause compute hours to be charged against it. Now, pricing is really complicated, right? We know this from the cloud. Pricing is really complicated, and it's really hard to get sort of baseline pricing. But Amazon, like all the vendors, are putting more and more tools in. They're putting pricing monitors and pricing thresholds. So I'll talk more about it as we go along. But one of the things that you want to think about when you're creating these instances is if you can get something that's really kind of tiny, micro is the smallest, go for it because it's cheaper. Okay? So once it's running, then you can just RDP to it. Yes?
You mentioned that now it starts running that.
Right.
Does that start the clock?
Yes.
So if it's running but no one's connected to it, it's not doing anything?
I think so. I think so, yeah. I think so. Do I have any Amazon people in here? Did anybody come in?
Do we have anybody victimized by that?
Yeah.
running instance for 2 months and realized.
Oh, totally. Yeah, me too, right. I mean, one of my biggest things is turn it off. Turn it off. I'm going to keep on saying that. Turn it off. Stop will stop the compute, but you also have a charge for storage. Now, the charge for storage, because you got the space, right? It's basically an S3, is pretty cheap, right? Unless you have some massive thing going on. It's like in the cents usually. Whereas the charge for compute is in the cents or dollars per hour. So, but yeah, I had that too. I recently took a class, and I had to miss the class because somebody in my family was sick. And the instructor was really nice. He called me and said, turn it off, because we were running Hadoop. So we're running something big. So once you're good to go, then you can connect. And what you're connecting to, this is really, really hard in this resolution. Wow, is you're connecting to this. Can you see it way down on the bottom there? You're connecting to this thing right here. And I don't even know if I remember the password, but so you go in here and you RDP, and of course I don't have this one. Let me see if I have this in my notes here. I think it's that one. Yeah, okay. So you just go here, and then you RDP to it. And yes, I'm on a Mac. Isn't it crazy? It's like 14 years Microsoft. What happened to me? Yeah, it's just, it's crazy. But I got to say, I like the SSD on the little MacBook Air, man.
Will it not connect until it finishes initializing the instance?
Yeah, but it says running, so.
Oh.
So. Is it a different, oh, thanks. Well, then it won't connect at all. So don't save, okay. So let me go here and see if I can copy and paste. Must have been some other testing I was doing. So, and I may not even take the time to do this because, you guys all know what an RDP looks like. So you just RDP, whoops, let's see, sorry, 8 a.m. drag here. Copy and paste, and here, and paste. Why is it not working? Okay, again, I'm just being a doof, so I'm not going to have you sit here and watch me. So basically, you go in there, you copy and paste, you RDP in, and then you're in. You have a full VM. You guys have all seen this. So that is the way that EC2 works. So I use EC2 very much. Oh, and it might still be initializing anyway, as you said. I use EC2 very, very much for training, testing, and dev. So I think that's sort of the DBA use case for this. There are there's running now. Lots and lots of other things that you can do with this. And if some of you do more like network admin stuff, there will be things that you can do as well. Virtualize, actually put production stuff up there. But I haven't put like mission critical production stuff up on EC2. So when there's downtime or outages or something, it doesn't bother me because it's a training type environment or it's a non-mission critical. Now that being said, it's not that I think that EC2 is not reliable. It's just it's a different architecture to implement virtualized mission critical applications and just spinning up a single instance. Does that make sense? Okay. So just to show you what's in here, we got status checks, so we can turn on status check alarms. We've got monitoring. This is what I was saying about Amazon adding more monitoring, you can do lots of stuff just through the console. So let me go back over here. So EC2, spin it up, turn it on. Don't use public images, okay?
Stop it.
And stop it. Yeah.
So what's the little trick to take an image that you have and make it?
Well, I was just thinking about talking about that. Okay, since you asked. So one of the areas that I'm thinking about is creating my own AMIs. That's what that is, where you take your image and you save it as an AMI. So why I'm thinking about it is because during the pre-release cycle for SQL Server 2012, the product group, I think, worked with Amazon or something to get the CTPs out there, but it wasn't complete. They didn't put the BI features. They didn't put DQS on it. And so actually last year at SQL Pass, I talked to the Amazon people, and I said, I'd be happy to work with you on that because I think it'd be a great service to the community is if we could get this sort of regular release of any beta features on AMIs. I would love that. I would really, really love that. And they seemed pretty interested. So, and maybe there'd even be like a slight premium charge, like 5 more cents an hour or something like that. But to me, it would be worth it because I mean, how many hours have we all spent setting up beta software, right? How many hours and hours? I mean, through my 14 years of SQL Server, my now 13-year-old daughter can install SQL Server because she's seen me do it so many times. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, so that's sort of my world of EC2. All right, so they have all these pre-built images. I didn't show you the gallery, but this is the gallery, which is a good place to look at as well. So it looks like Amazon is adding, this marketplace capability. So this idea of images with certain software on them. So just kind of giving you a window into this.
So
Yep.
the gallery is the ones that Amazon built, and the AMIs are the ones.
The community, I think so. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I haven't spent a huge amount of time there because I usually just start with an Amazon image that has Windows on it, and go from there. Okay, going into storage. So the first, the thing that I'm getting my clients on, so the first level of using Amazon's cloud is archival storage. And some of you in here use it, S3, which is a file server in the sky. Basically, it's cheap, easy, has a UI interface. But by the way, all these things also have APIs. So if you want to programmatically access them, you can do that. If any of you have Pluralsight subscriptions, there's a guy that did a whole series on how to access Amazon's web services with .NET APIs. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. But just for us looking at it, I'm just going to use the web interface. So this is basically equivalent to like a Dropbox or a SkyDrive, but for the enterprise. And the reason that I think it's important for us as data storage professionals to look at this is because, who doesn't need archival storage, right? Cheap and easy. And again, just show of hands. I know I asked you, but I'm sleepy. How many people use S3 in the room already? Like a quarter of the room already. This is probably the most used service. So you go in, you select, whatever you want. Creating a bucket is just like a file server, if you will. And then you create folders inside of it. Create a folder. Hello, Seattle. And it's a file server, right? Basically, it's a file server on Amazon. And then you go into your folder, and then you upload something. Easy. It's just simple. So, and cheap. Simple and cheap and fast. So S3 is sort of, to me, a no-brainer. Also, if you want to store information to make it available for other people, if I go where I have something, I can right-click here. I can make this public. I can associate other properties to it. It's just very, very, very simple to use, and has a lot of different application for just raw storage. Now, that being said, if you're putting something that's mission critical, because you might, in Amazon, then you need to be cognizant of the fact that, like anything else, it can go down. So what should you do about that? And really there's sort of three schools of thought. One is just put it up there and, you're hoping for the best. That's frankly what customers are doing, and I don't like it, and I'm advising against it because there's this perception from the C-level executives that is getting pushed down to the data professionals that if you go to the cloud, it's cheaper. And I'm talking over and over to these folks of you get what you pay for. And if you're just going to do one level of S3 storage, your risk for things going down is pretty high. So, is that it might seem less expensive, but are you willing to accept if it's down? So you can do really two things. You can do multi-availability zone in Amazon, so not within the same data center, but within multiple data centers. And you're basically having redundant storage across Amazon then, which is one way that some people are going. The newer sort of way is to go multi-cloud. Now, this is something that I'm just getting into with my customers, and it's obviously very complicated because right now the vendors don't play well together. So there's these like application integration vendors that I'm starting to work with. The one in particular that I'm doing client work with right now is RightScale. And they have a series of templates that facilitate multi-cloud. So this is just like, this is literally right on the edge of what I'm doing. So for those of you that want, are finding good value, and let's just keep like following my blog and stuff, because I'll write about how it really is. But the promise is that it enables multi-cloud. And I talked to some people at TDWI, TDWI, the big data warehouse group, and it actually was one guy. It was a speaker who does a lot of work with moving big stuff to the cloud, and he talked to me about multi-cloud and using RightScale. So I'm trying to move my clients away from redundancy in Amazon into multi-cloud, because I think that that's a better bet. So, but again, if you're just trying stuff out, or you're archiving and maybe you have a local copy, you just want a redundant copy, it's probably okay. Yes?
In your experience using the cloud, is it access to the data that becomes an issue, or is it data loss?
It's access to the data. It's access to the data, yeah. Now, anything's possible, right? But, knock on wood, I haven't had any, I haven't had any cloud situations with loss. I've had, significant. I might have like a little bit during a downtime, but it's always been access. So, question?
You had a chance to compare the RightScale or Amazon multi-cloud to what is now beta in Azure that really sits?
To Azure?
Really sits in Azure 6 again? The brand new stuff.
Yeah, no, doesn't, not so much. So you have S3, and then there's a new capability that Amazon announced, which is called Glacier. And Glacier is really the new tape backup. It's extremely cheap, like between 1/10 and 1/100th of S3, and I'll show you the pricing in just a minute. But this is the deal. Where they get you is not when you read it in. They get you if you have to pull it out. Okay, so I'm telling you, right? So a couple things about Glacier. Glacier is slow because it's like a tape backup. It's an archival, it's a vault, but it's really, really, really cheap. Let's see. So let me see. Where's the thing here? Let me show you the pricing. Oh, that's their service health dashboard, by the way, which is handy, just like Azure's. Let's see. I'll just put it on here. Glacier pricing. I mean, when it came out, I couldn't actually believe how cheap it was. Yeah, it's just, yeah. I mean, it's, look at that. Look at that. Yeah, I mean, amazing. Okay, so what it looks like inside of here is it's just, it's not as GUIfied, if you will, because it's a new service. It basically, you just create a vault, and then you have your vault, okay? So it was interesting. You can always tell which products are good because the community responds. Like a day after Glacier came out, there were all these Glacier clients that enterprising developers just spun up. So I'll show you one of them. There are some for the Mac, but since you guys are more probably Windows, I have a Windows VM here, and it's called Fast Glacier. And basically, it has a free version for like trying out, and then I think it's, I don't know, 50. I don't know. Well, I'll just tell you what it is. Yeah, $30, and for, whatever. And this is the way that it looks. So this is Fast Glacier, and this is for the Glacier, Amazon, and you want to upload. It's GUIfied, and there's APIs around it too if you want to do this like programmatically or as part of a job. But you want to make a folder, new folder. Seattle is cold as a glacier. And it is because I'm from LA and I'm freezing. Okay? And then if I go in here and I want to upload something, upload a file, and I pick a file, open, and it's going to upload. And I actually am getting pretty good speed here. So, again, simple. The new tape backup, if you will. Cheap. The thing about this stuff is it's not always the right solution. Like yesterday when I was talking about NoSQL and I was talking about trying out some of these NoSQL databases on the cloud, somebody asked about security. And that's sort of one of the big questions around cloud. And for some, business situations, you're not going to put your data up there because you don't control it. I mean, the thing about what's going on in the database world is basically we just have more options now. And if you have certain data for which the security requirements are, looser or softer, or you don't have like HIPAA compliance, or it's not financial, this might be a good solution. But for other data, this is not a good solution. I'm not saying don't, throw out what you have. I am just saying be aware of these other options for the situations that warrant. Because in my experience anyway as a consultant, this is what the people who sign my paychecks find high value, that I know this information. And that's why I'm taking the time to share it with you. It's not, again, I don't work for Amazon. This isn't always the right thing. But it can be. It can be. All right. So S3 and Glacier for storage. A lot of, I work for a developmentor from a contract standpoint. I wrote the 2012 courseware. And we put all of our media files, like if you listen to my webcast, they're being streamed from S3. So just to give you another use case of it, we do our training VMs on EC2. So again, this isn't just sort of pie in the sky stuff. Real businesses are using this. Okay, so now that we see S3, just to give you the relationship, if you spin up a VM in EC2, it creates storage on S3 by default. Now there is another type of storage, and it has a redundancy of 3 copies within the same geographic set of data centers by default. There is another type of storage called EBS, which is elastic block storage. And the differences, as it says here, are significant if you want to have reuse of your EC2 images. If you're just playing around, just use S3. It's fine because it's the cheapest. But EBS, you can store your AMIs. So that goes to your point earlier. You want to pick EBS storage when you spin up your EC2 instance. You can stop and start. So that's actually really important. S3, you can't. You just turn it on, turn it off, delete it. It costs slightly more. But when I say more, it's like in the cents per hour. And a really important thing, if you're using it for any sort of like load testing, you can expand the size. S3 is a fixed size. But it has only 1 copy. So you don't have the redundancy by default. So just a little bit of the granularity around EC2 storage. And again, if you're finding this useful, I see people taking a lot of notes, great. But all these slides are on the PASS site. And they're also on SlideShare and my blog and everywhere on the earth. I always joke, if you are looking for me and you can't find me, then you must be like not on earth. Because if you Google my name, there's like millions of things. So all this stuff's free. Okay, so, yes.
So a little bit of confusion here. So I know nothing about this. So EC2 is just the space where you run the unit?
Yep.
But you still have to then figure out where you're going to store it.
Yes. So great question. Sorry, I'm not being clear. So let me clarify again. When you turn on an EC2 instance, you are being charged for the compute. So it's like Windows, Azure, web, and worker roles. Does that make sense? You will also be charged for the storage of the physical file, which will either be S3 or EBS. Okay? The significant portion of what you're charged will be the compute. It's like 10 to 100 times more than the storage. Does that make sense? Good question. Okay, so I showed you S3. I showed you Glacier. Okay. Woo! Now the exciting stuff. This is really why I wanted to talk to this audience about Amazon. We are SQL Server people. We love SQL Server. We want to know everything about SQL Server. We want to have every possibility to deploy and work with SQL Server in a way that we want to work with it. And I'll say this straight out. Having worked directly for the SQL Azure team, Microsoft has not delivered a product that I feel good about in the cloud for SQL Server. And I actually presented to them before I left on what I thought that should be. And when Amazon came out with Relational Database Service, with SQL Server, I was so happy I could cry because it was what I wanted it to be. And so what I immediately did, it's actually kind of a funny story. I don't know if he made it over here. I made a screencast about how happy I was about this implementation of SQL Server in the cloud and why I was so happy. And when I came to the show, I went to the Amazon booth to talk to the guys. And I said, oh, I'm your best friend. I'm going to talk about your stuff. And I'm looking for him in the crowd, but he probably partied too hard last night. One of the developers from the RDS team is actually in the booth. And he said, oh, we're a really small team from the SQL Server stuff. We're 5 people. And when you made that screencast, we all watched it, and we were so happy you understood. It was such a cool moment, right? Because we want backup. We want point-in-time restore. We want Management Studio. We want Profiler. Damn it, we want these things. And RDS has all these things. You know, I'm sorry, Microsoft. SQL Azure doesn't. Damn it, get on the train. So in any case,
Can I say something, just a comment?
yeah.
One more thing that RDS has is we can specify that your instance can be SQL Server 2008 or 2012 or whatever. Azure doesn't have that. It has some weird hybrid. That
I know. So let me get off my sort of cloud here, and talk about this from a practical point. Now, this gets a little bit confusing, so let me be really clear. EC2 is a virtual machine. You can RDP to it. You can do anything you want to it. You can get an AMI that has SQL Server installed on it, okay? But it's a VM. Amazon doesn't manage it other than to show you, like how much capacity is running. So like you got this thing here, status check thing, monitoring, which shows you, status check thing, which shows you if I turned it on. Basically, it's like the task manager thing in Windows. It shows you the CPU and all that stuff. It just basically shows you what's being used. But it's not a managed instance in any way. You manage it. It's just a VM in the sky, okay? So what's RDS? RDS is Relational Database Service. It is a managed database VM in the sky. So it's still a VM, but it has managed database services. What does that mean? Okay, first of all, I'll show you what it looks like. So if I say launch, I can say MySQL, I can say Oracle, I can say SQL Server, and the free tier has SQL Server Express. So if you're playing around with it, you can have Express, and you can have, when you say Express, you can say 2008 or 2012. Which, as you were saying, and very important, very, very important. And then you have to specify how you're handling the licensing. This is very, for SQL Server Express, it's license included. For enterprise, it's bring your own, or the license model is explained pretty well. Another thing that they have that is fantastic is provisioned IOPS, which means performance guarantee. This is amazing. Microsoft has nothing like this. No performance guarantees. And if any of you have tried out SQL Azure, yeah, the performance is good, but no performance guarantee. So you spin it up. Here it is. You have to then make it available to be accessed. So you do that through DB security groups, and you just specify the IP address of the particular security group. And did I do that? I can't remember. I did it for the EC2, right? So yeah, that one's set up. Okay. So then you just go to your... no, hold on. And then you just go to your instance, and then you go here, and here's your endpoint. And then the magic happens. If the demo gods are good to me, because I did pre-connect to this. Let's see. Ta-da! There it is in Management Studio. Let's see if it's still going to be good to me. Yep. Ta-da! So, and I mean, anything that you want. It's full SQL Server. It's full SQL Server. No restriction. I mean, there are a few restrictions, but it's not to the level of Azure. Like I said, you get Profiler, you get Database Tuning Advisor, you get backup, you get point-in-time restore. It's what we want. It's what we want. So to me, this is a stunning thing. And I'm really excited about it. I see a couple hands. Yes, or you're just thinking. You're thinking of your question.
The primary difference between using the managed RDS, using RDS SQL
Yeah.
Server versus using EC2 and installing SQL Server on the VM is just
You get a level of services. Let me go ahead and spin this up. So if I say launch instance, okay, and I go here, and I say here, and I say select. So we say 2012, and we say you can scale. Now this is the express, so only micro or small. So you get the ability to scale your instance. I'll say micro. Okay. You have multi-availability zone deployment, if you will, for high availability. You get this ability to have, obviously your storage. The IOPS is a difference. That's a significant difference, a performance difference, which you pay for. I'll actually turn that on, and there they tell you about the IOPS. I'm not gonna leave it on, but that's how it looks. And then I call it Lynn Seattle, and go here, and then I say the availability zone, and then I say the security group, and then this is the big difference right here. You can have automatic backups, so you can have some level of management. Yes or no? If you say no, then you can run your backups when you want. You specify a backup retention period. You specify a backup window. You specify a maintenance window. Now again, because this is something when I was talking about SQL Azure that you guys all want, right? You want the ability to back up and restore at a point in time. And that's Microsoft hasn't chosen to deliver it for SQL Azure. So I actually talked to that Amazon engineer, and I said, so how did you solve this problem? And he said, they just put me in a room with a couple people for 3 weeks, and we cracked it. And he told me technically how he did it. And I was just so impressed, because this is what people want. So, a question over there?
Yeah, are you able to specify backing up to cheaper storage, like Glacier or low S3, or does it kind of handle it and charge you the normal storage?
It handles it and charges you. But one of the things that's fantastic is Amazon is quite happy that I'm talking to all of you. And I actually have a meeting directly after this talk with Amazon to take your feedback directly to Amazon and to be able to give answers out to the community. So that's a really, really great point. And I'm going to bring that up with Amazon. So did I see another hand? Yeah.
The availability zone, is that US only?
Right, I don't know. I don't know. I can look. Let me take that at the end. Okay, let me take that at the end. So the guy's question about what's different, I can't remember who it was. Is it making sense of what's different? It has a level of management that is not in the EC2 for higher availability and for IOPS. Yes? Right, so right-click here, modify. Okay. Notice also, take DB snapshot, restore at a point in time. It's kind of like, nah, 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 isn't it? Yeah, amazing. You can use Profiler against this. Are you like grasping that? Isn't that exciting? I can't say that to too many rooms full of people. Like if you go to the Christmas party and it just doesn't make a great conversation. Yes.
Could you use a monitor tool since it's a URL?
For example,
I don't know, small.
most probably yes. What I did is I made, I'll show you my video channel. I made this is my YouTube channel. I have 105 videos because I used to write books, but now people just want to watch videos, so that's the way it is. And it's about SQL 2012 and NoSQL and all this stuff. And I have a little Amazon section here, and I'll just show you these. So I have how to set up EC2 as a second laptop, because when I was at Microsoft, I had 7 laptops, and I left, and I didn't want to have 7 laptops, so I use EC2 instances to play around. Setting up SQL Server 2008 R2 on RDS. This was before 2012 came out. And then I have, this one is one of my favorites, SQL Azure versus RDS, Smackdown. So I won't, pour salt in the wound, but you can watch that. That's kind of a fun video. I have about Glacier, and then I have Elastic Beanstalk. So Yes.
What about legacy systems that you might want to move up there? What kind of support are there for older images?
In EC2? So again, EC2, you can actually, just like you can in Windows Azure VMs, you can attach a VHD. There is a way that there is support for that. So the short answer is yes. It's just a compute environment, so you can put anything up there. So yes would be the short answer. So yes, him first, yeah.
You mentioned there was some limitations in RDS that we should be aware of. However many moves.
Yeah, so let me, okay, so I knew you guys would ask that, so let's get to the documentation. Oh, by the way, I'm not really advocating this. Again, I'm just reporting the news. It's interesting, first time ever, AWS is having a conference. First conference, it's coming up, so interesting. So let me go to RDS documentation. Pretty good on their documentation.
I think that conference is already sold out.
Oh, is it? Okay. Okay. So RDS. Again, this is just handy. This is like, how to navigate this. They have getting started guides. They have quick reference cards. I'll get to the limitations in a minute. And this is if you want to work from the command line. So I know it's an eye chart, but if you want to work from the command line, you can. So there's like 3 ways. You can work, in the GUI. You can work in the command line, and you can use the API. So the service guide. Notice they have them on Kindle too, which is sort of funny. I'm a Kindle person, so I like that. Signing up, setting up, using, technical, that, FAQ, common SQL tasks. Okay, so this just talks about stuff that you do. I may have to look it up, but I have to tell you, as compared to what else is out there, it's tiny. You know what I mean? It's tiny, tiny, tiny. So I may have to look that up. But this, this is the documentation, which I wanted to show you guys anyway. So you can tell I'm a huge fan of RDS. The other thing that I'm hoping is I'm hoping to do more work with Amazon, like I was saying, to get anything beta. I would love, just one second, I'd just love to get like all beta stuff as AMIs and just kind of actually work with the PaaS community so that I could like blast it out on a mailing list and say, want to try out the next CTP? Go here, right? Because it's such a time suck, isn't it? For all of us to try out all the next feature and all this. I mean, I have spent hours and hours and hours installing things. And in 2012, it just really improved my ability to know the product. And when we switched from, what was it, like CTP4 to RC0, I just turned off my instance and turned on a new instance. It was awesome. So go ahead.
What redundancy is there in RDS?
3 copies.
Also, it's just
Yeah, 3 copies. Yeah, yes.
Also, one limitation is no mirroring support yet.
Yes.
But mirroring will be supported, I hear, about Q1 or something.
Well, since you brought it up, okay, the RDS guy approved me to say this. That is the feature that they are working on actively right now. So thank you for bringing that up because that's a big concern for all of us, and the team is really focused on delivering that. And again, because now I have this more direct connection, you can read the Amazon blog, but I'll be on it too. So watch my blog, and I'll be trying it out. Yeah.
backups. I'm assuming they're native SQL. Do you have the ability to install a compression tool like Lightspeed or something?
I don't know. I will ask them. I don't know. That would make sense. I would think so, but I'll check. Okay? Okay, let me keep going. So RDS. Okay, so this is what we're talking about, why RDS costs more, because you have a higher level of service, you have provisioned I/O, you have scheduled backups, point-in-time restores. So the questions for me to take to Amazon are, when is the mirroring going to be done, if they have any idea, compression tools, and alternate storage locations. So I'll take those questions and try to get answers today if I can. Schedule maintenance windows and full use of all tools. So I just think it's a fantastic solution when your data situation warrants using the cloud, okay? Which is not all the time. All right, now we get into the new world, the NoSQL, right? Oh, you should use NoSQL, we don't want all that structure, we just want, scalability, blah, blah, blah. So the new kid on the block with Amazon is DynamoDB. This is the evolution of what used to be called SimpleDB, which is their NoSQL cloud database. So the big deal about it is it's run on SSDs. It's very, very interesting, and I'm actually going to just show it to you because I think it's easier to understand what it is by just looking at it. So if I go to here and I go to Dynamo, this is the new world of NoSQL. They have a little video you can watch and this kind of stuff. But basically, fully managed non-relational database that provides fast and predictable performance with seamless scalability. Of course, like any other NoSQL database, there's no transactional consistency. Okay, it's funny, I've been talking to a lot of customers here at the show about, NoSQL, Hadoop, that kind of stuff, and customers the whole year long. Again, the perceptions out there, there's so much misinformation. Not really from our community, but from like the management side, which just reads about NoSQL is cheaper and gets all excited, right? Go back and tell those managers, no transactional consistency, no transactional integrity. I had a guy yesterday after my talk that was, basically almost forced to use a NoSQL solution, even though he knew better. It's really a challenge right now. So one of the things I'm trying to do is arm all of you with, accurate information. If you need transactional consistency, do not use NoSQL. Yes, you can build it in the business layer and blah, blah. Okay, and if your developers want to do that, but you don't have it in the database. If you want scalability, fast access, fast scalability, eventual consistency, fine, okay? So create a table, DynamoDB, table name. Let's call it events, all right? Primary key type, hash and range. Why? So it can be partitioned. So, and I'll call it event ID or something and make it a number, okay? And read capacity and write capacity. You're literally paying for read-write, okay? Read capacity, write capacity. And they give you a big warning. Throughput capacity of this table will cost up to 90 cents per month if you exceeded the free tier. The free tier is 100 megabytes of storage, 5 units of write, and 10 units of read. And they will charge you. They will charge you. So 5 units of, what, did I get backwards? I don't know. I'm going to delete this afterwards anyway. So, and then you say continue. And you basically have an alarm when it hits 80%, so you can buy more capacity. And you're done. That's it. That's your big bucket in the sky. That's the new world of behavioral data, where you pump in your log data. And of course, obviously, there's APIs that go against this for your developers and stuff. And all on SSD. Okay? I haven't used Dynamo yet. I have had customers that have done NoSQL solutions on-prem and in the cloud. MongoDB is what I've worked with, which is a document database. Be interesting. I have a potential client. They're in oil and gas, and they have monitoring on their oil rigs. And they wanted to keep everything in SQL Server, and it didn't scale. And they had 2 failed projects. So they called me because they wanted a person who was a SQL expert who also knew about these big NoSQL cloud situations. So far, the customers that I've had that have called me that have said, I want to have NoSQL, usually don't have enough data, and they don't have the expertise to have it. But there's clearly a need for this, because otherwise Amazon wouldn't have done it. So probably future looking as we get more behavioral data, but there it is. Elastic MapReduce. This is the platform as a service. And what this does is this is scalable application hosting and integrates with tools. What tools? Visual Studio. Are you surprised to see this? A lot of people are surprised to see this. An AWS Explorer inside of Visual Studio. Again, quietly intelligent, those Amazon people, aren't they? Quietly intelligent. So there's a AWS SDK for .NET, and there's the AWS add-in for Visual Studio, so that you can look at your S3 buckets. There's my S3 buckets, remember? So it's just like the Azure Explorer, same deal, right? There it is. I can see my files inside of here. There's RDS, so I could connect to my RDS instances, okay? And if I wanted to work with Beanstalk, I could deploy my application, which can be Java or .NET or PHP or any of those. Work on it and deploy it and have a local testing, just like Azure, same thing, okay? Now, I haven't used Platform as a Service for Amazon, but again, just for the purpose of completeness, I've played with it, but I haven't used it in production. Interestingly, the one that I've used is, and this is going, again, way outside the normal, is I've actually used Google's for the reason I'll tell you at the end of the talk here. But the way that this works is you just create your application and then you deploy it out, and I'll show you how it looks. So Elastic Beanstalk is here. If I can go over there. Elastic Beanstalk. And there's a little sample app if you want to play with it. And basically, it's the same type of concept. So you can say, okay, I want a Windows application, and then you can set the scaling for both the data side and the compute side. And you can set it versus alarms. All right, one more service to talk about to be complete here. We've heard a lot about Hadoop at this show, right? So does Amazon have Hadoop in the cloud? What do they have? We've seen HD Insight, right? The Hadoop on Azure, which is good. You should take a look at it. Good luck even finding it. It's called MapReduce. Yeah, they have the Hadoop, but it's really, really small. So their implementation, their equivalent, if you will, to Microsoft's HD Insight or Hadoop on Azure is Elastic MapReduce, which is their version of it. Again, like EC2, like the other things, this is not a beta product. This has been out in production for a couple of years. Okay? So the way it works in Hadoop, if you're not familiar, is you have a huge storage bucket. It's not even NoSQL. It's just a different kind of file system. It's called HDFS. And then the way you process against it is you run MapReduce jobs. So that's your ETL or your query, if you will. And it's massively distributed. And HDFS comes out of Google's Bigtable, which is how they index the web. So it's batch, not interactive. Okay? Just like NoSQL is not transactionally consistent, Hadoop is batch, not interactive. As in, you put in the job and you wait. And you wait. And it could be minutes or hours. Okay? So upload the data to the S3, the storage, create your MapReduce job, and then get the results. So new job flow, and we say new job flow, and here's the Hadoop version. And then run your own or run a sample. And the quintessential sample is word count, which is take some text body and do mapping on each node. This is the idea with Hadoop, that it's this MapReduce is a distributed process, that the process goes to the data rather than the data going to the process. So the map is basically split the text up by the word. So word, 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 word. And the reduce is the aggregation. Count the number of same words and then give me the output. Okay? So we say OK. And then we say word count. And we say the input location. Here's the input. The output location. Notice your bucket. So I have to put my bucket, which I think is LynnLangit. May not be right. And then they're using Python. You can use Java. You can use Python. If you use streaming, you can use C#. You can use JavaScript to actually execute the MapReduce. And let me make sure that that's right. Otherwise, it'll bomb out on me if I don't have the correct bucket. Because if it doesn't have a destination, it'll say, no, you can't go there. Now, what do you do with Hadoop? That's always a good question. What do customers do with Hadoop? One of the things what we talked about is this oil and gas monitoring thing. Another thing that I've had some customers be interested in is that's called footfall traffic in retail, where they basically capture all the information from a phone if you have location services turned on, and like literally every minute, or not every minute, every couple of minutes, like where you go through the mall. That's an example, like a type of logging. Let's see, so I have a LynnLangit bucket, so that should work. All right, say OK. And then now notice what's happening. This is kind of like, the reason I show this because this pulls a lot together. we're using Hadoop on AWS. But what is it creating? You see this? Creating EC2 instances with Hadoop on them. Does it make sense? Okay, and then you say the instance type, how many, the instance count, and then you go ahead. Now, this is an interesting thing over here. We all want to save money. So if you think about it, these Hadoop jobs could be to process some log information, which could be used for analytics, combine the results with analytics, which is, batch, not interactive. So you might not, have a need to, process this like immediately. Maybe you just process it overnight or something. So there's this thing around pricing in Amazon called spot instances. And it's like the, I'm actually from North Dakota, so it's like the agricultural spot market, right? So basically you set price, and then if that price is available, you get it, and if not, you don't, okay? And it's, actually a hacker put me onto it, to be honest with you, for the training stuff. And it can be as much as 1/10 or even 1/20th of the price. So I use Spot a lot for self-training. And I just say, well, if it's down, no big deal. So I say, okay. And then a key pair is for security, how you might SSH into it. And then you can log if you want to. And then you say continue. And then you say continue. And then here's your job arguments. And then create a job flow. So create a pipeline. And then it's going to go ahead and again, it might take a few minutes. So I'll come back as we get to the end of this and show you the job flow. You're being charged here for what? Storage of the EC2 instance, compute of the EC2 instance, configuration of the Hadoop, right? And logging and reporting information. Does it make sense? Building up all the services. And of course, you can put additional monitoring on top of it. All right, so MapReduce. Why I like it is the word easy. As I was trying to learn Hadoop when I left Microsoft, I actually had the very unpleasant, I chose the unpleasant task of trying to install Hadoop on Linux, and I damn near died after 14 years of Microsoft. And I said, I want to use cloud whenever I can. It's horrible. Anyway. Okay, so I talked about Beanstalk. All right, so pulling it together. If you want to use a relational database in the cloud that is SQL Server, I would absolutely recommend RDS. Absolutely. Now, if you want to use MySQL, I've been using Google's offering because their free tier is bigger, basically. You can get more without paying. I run a nonprofit, and I was going to put it on AWS, but I've been running my nonprofit stuff on Google MySQL. I've been really happy with it. There are others out there, but I just kind of focus on the big three. For no SQL buckets, S3, wonderful. EBS for backing, I know a lot of acronyms. I'm an evangelist, what can I say? EBS for backing EC2 instances that you want to have persistent. Okay. Google has a thing. Microsoft has Azure Blobs, of course. For NoSQL databases, Amazon's thing is Dynamo. Google has this thing called the High Replication Data Store, but it's tied to Google App Engine. At this point, Microsoft has Azure Tables. I haven't used a NoSQL database that's pre-configured from these guys. I've actually used this people called Heroku. They have Mongo pre-configured, and I've used them. There are some other services, data mining, if you will, streaming machine learning. Google has the prediction API. There's some other things out there. One kind of a very big one is called Splunk. Document and graph databases. There's other types of databases. We talked about Hadoop MapReduce. And then there's also data sets and other. So costs. And I hope this is current. I tried to update it as of last week. If you're a new customer, Amazon has a good free tier to get started. So it's a good deal to get in if you're a new customer. Once you get past the first year and the free tier, then you got to pay good attention. Somebody mentioned it here, and I will underscore it. Pay attention. If you don't take anything else out of this talk, I'm going to stand up here at the end while you guys come and talk to me, and I'm going to turn everything off because I have been bitten by this. Turn it off and delete it because I'm past my year. Really, really important. The free tier, though, is good to start. Now, if you run a nonprofit or something, I actually think Google's free tier is better when you have a small production thing. So I'm using Google's free tier for my cloud stuff, for my nonprofit. So here's the free tier for SQL and Dynamo. So you can see 750 hours of RDS for SQL Server Micro, 20 gigs of database storage. So if you want to try it out. And there's a typical bill. I pay between, 20 and 75 bucks a month just for trying stuff out, just to give you an idea. Which is, I consider it a cost of doing business. And some months will be more. So creative financing, use regular pricing, use what you need, no more. Instance size, storage side, watch for price drops. And then I talked about the EC2 pausing and deleting. There's vanity pricing. You can set price alerts, use spot pricing. And Amazon has this new thing. It's actually really interesting. If you are moving production load up to Amazon, you can buy reserved instances, which has a higher performance guarantee, like for EC2. But if you buy too many, you can actually sell them back, which is really interesting. And I found out, I was in Silicon Valley at another conference this week, that a major US retailer has been doing this for 2 years. And they're the impetus behind sell it back. So really interesting, very interesting in terms of pricing. I would just tell you sort of generally, it's good for us that cloud is so new and competitive. And the pricing changes to our benefit very frequently. So you have to pay attention to it. So comparing the other vendors, Amazon has good free tier when you start. There are considerations after the first year. I wish Microsoft would be better about their free tier. I am so tired of making a new account every 90 days. I'm so tired of it. Any Microsoft people in this room, stop that. I hate that. So then there's other services as well.
It's even better with Hadoop, because you get the free cluster for 5 days.
Right.
And then you get
Right. Seriously. So, things to take away. Try out EC2 for testing, training, and production, with the emphasis on testing, training, and lightweight production. S3 for archiving, read, write. Glacier for archiving, write is fast and cheap, read is slow and expensive. RDS for high availability SQL Server. DynamoDB for fast, no SQL and SSDs. Watch the pricing though. Elastic MapReduce for easy Hadoop MapReduce. If you're going to sign up for HD Insight and then you want to go to production, I'm sorry, it's still in beta for Microsoft, so you have to go to Amazon. Sad but true. Elastic Beanstalk for application scalability. Check out AWS training and local user groups. AWS has user groups. Did you know that? They're really starting to build community. I'm starting to go to the ones in LA and Orange County. I just went to a partner-authorized AWS training. Well, I went to one day of it. Actually, I couldn't go to the rest of it. But it was for MapReduce, and it was actually fantastic. So I was very, very happy with the training. They have a lot online as well. So, in addition to the database stuff that I do, I am the co-founder of a nonprofit teaching kids programming. Some of you have heard about this, but you're going to hear again because that's the way it is. So it has a set of free and open source courseware based on both Small Basic, that's shown here, designed for kids ages 10 and up, tested on first girls, then boys, so both boys and girls, fun to get them started programming. What you can do is you can go to the site. You can look at the lessons. There's about half a year's worth of after-school lessons there. Try it out. Go teach a kid. If you like what you see, go to a school and teach an after-school program. We are a 501c3, part of the Mona Foundation, which is based here in Seattle, which is a global education foundation. We are, as I know, being taught in 15 US states and 10 countries. And the core of us is 2 people, so not bad, eh? And we recently completed the translation of our library into Java because we wanted full control of the environment, and Java is an open source language, and it's the language that the kids take in high school for advanced placement. So our stuff is designed for middle school aged children. We are in the process of seeking grants, NSF and other grants, and if we get them, then we are going to augment our courseware library with data courseware. So if any of you have thoughts or passion around that, it is my dream to create big data courseware for middle school aged kids, because I want my daughter to have something cool to work with. So it's a lot of fun. We just had our first sort of big gig in Molokai. We spent 12 days in Molokai. We taught over 200 8th graders in Java. And then we also taught the little kids Kodu. We taught Hawaiian immersion as well. So we co-taught with Hawaiian-speaking teachers. It was really a fun trip. So anyway, and teaching kids programming has an extension to it, which we first wrote in Small Basic, and now we're porting in Java, which writes to Google App Engine. That's what I was talking about. So what we do is we capture some of the information to Google App Engine, and it's been an interesting sort of thing. So anyway, so this is me. I have lots and lots of information on my blog, and I have the 105 videos. I tweet constantly, so I don't know if you can stand it, but if you can stand it, go ahead and follow me on Twitter. And like I said, I have a meeting with AWS like I'm walking over there. So I wanted to take the last few minutes of the time here and hear any questions or feedback, because I'm going to have the ear of AWS. Go ahead.
I would like to see if we can configure my SQL Server on RDS to use SSD.
Okay, I'm going to actually start writing things down. So RDS SSD, and then RDS install third party, and RDS backup to preferred location. Okay, and RDS, it's all RDS. See, interesting, huh? High availability. Okay.
Also multi-cloud for RDS.
Yeah, you want me to talk, you want me to really basically look at, multi-cloud. No, I'm cool.
Also, configuring some of these enterprise editions or some of the larger things so that you just don't have a C drive. So that
Right, so RDS configuration, no C drive, yeah. Just the things that we want on-prem, basically, yeah.
on a D drive,
Yeah.
log on a C
Yeah.
drive, something like
Yeah, and again, to be clear, I do not work for Amazon. I am only going to go over there and talk to them about these things, and then I'm going to report back, okay? Yes? Log shipping? Okay, I mean, I'll ask them. I think that they're focusing on mirroring, to be honest with you, which I honestly agree with, but I'll ask them. Other one? Yeah, third-party backup compression. Redgate, yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the European non-US. Yeah. Actually, if you stay, I'll actually look that up while I'm deleting, because I want to know that. Okay, over there, you had one?
Yeah, on their virtual machines, do you know if they offer like static IP addresses?
Like what?
Static IP addresses?
Yes, they do. Yes. Yeah.
It's more Amazon-wide, but how about letting us have a profile that will shut machines off after an hour?
Oh, that'd be. I like you. Profile to shut off. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that'll be at the top of it.
No, but a third party can write it because it's programmable. Like I could write that. Yeah, pretty much. So the other thing I would ask you is if you found value in this session, because seriously, I submitted this as kind of a lark, because I was presenting it to my local SQL. I was talking about it in the hallway at SQL Saturday and things like that, and people were like, "Oh, you should do a session on that." So I started, presenting locally, and people said, "Oh, this is pretty good." And I said, "All right, I'll submit it to PASS." And I mean, it's kind of unusual that you're talking about AWS at PASS. If you found this to be valuable, really, or in what ways, valuable or not valuable, because this is kind of new ground, right? Please do evals for this one. You know what I mean? Because I'm trying to make this talk really relevant. I don't work for Amazon. I don't want to have a sales talk. I want to have really useful stuff. So the targeting level, like, was it too easy? Should it be more in detail? I mean, should I be showing like, architecture diagrams and talking about different architectures and how you actually use. I mean, is that of interest? You know what I mean? So share, because I want to make good use of your time. PASS is a important event, and I want to make sure you have good value. Go ahead.
So, given that it's kind of a juxtaposition that you're here to pass, but that you've worked for Microsoft, do you intend to continue working through things like SQL Saturdays or do the
I do, because I do a lot of work in SQL 2012. I love SQL 2012. I love the product. And so, I'm talking about DQS, I'm talking about BISM, because I have the background in BI, right? So I love the BI story in the Microsoft platform. I think that, it's wonderful, right? And I think that in terms of the relational database world, I am not a big Oracle fan. So SQL Server is kind of, the premier one for me. So I'm sorry if I offended anybody, but so to me, when I look at my work, and this is why I'm talking about these things at SQL PASS and all over the place, SQL Server is still right now the core. It's probably 50 to 75% of the work that I do, but 25% is not SQL Server. And as an educator, I want to share. So does that make sense? Yeah, so both, basically, yeah.
And I was wondering about the Oracle angle too, because I'm sure they'd never invite you to one of their
Yeah. Well, Oracle's a whole big beast, so, I'm not an expert in Oracle, so.
they keep it that way.
Yeah, I know. Go ahead.
How about experience with the BI stack? You mentioned reporting services and other services.
Yeah, now that's interesting, right? Because Microsoft is out with reporting services on Azure. Still beta, though, right?
No, ours
Oh, it's out? Okay. That's a differentiator. That's cool that you can scale reporting services, and if that's a business need, you should look at that. Again, I'm not down on Azure where it's good, right?
No, but in terms of performance or manageability on an AWS machine, when you have any deployments where you run analysis services instances, one dimension or another?
No. Well, I'm as a person who wrote 3 books on OLAP cubes, if I can get over it, so can you. I'm basically not building cubes anymore. I'm building BISM models and moving to Hadoop. So, yeah. All right. Well, thanks you guys for coming out. Hopefully it was a good session. Thank you.